A new report challenges Donald Trump's claim the alleged drug boat central to the double strike controversy was heading to the United States. Instead, the naval admiral who led the operation reportedly told lawmakers that boat was heading to transfer drugs to a larger boat destined for another South American country. Two sources with direct knowledge of his remarks told CNN. Just one more apparent detail from that closed-door meeting that resulted in conflicting storylines from the members of Congress who saw the video.
I saw two survivors trying to flip a boat loaded with drugs down for the United States, back over, so they could stay in the fight.
There were two individuals clinging to flotsam. That's what there was. There wasn't weaponry of any kind. There wasn't a radio. There was no means for them to communicate other than the fact that the fire and the smoke was fairly well visible for a long distance around, but there was no radio.
Joining me now, Vice Chair of the House Democratic Caucus, Congressman Ted Lieu. He is a member of the House Foreign Affairs and Judiciary Committees and is also a former Air Force lawyer. Congressman, good to see you, my friend. So why are there such conflicting characterizations of what happened in those waters? Is what happened truly up for interpretation?
Thank you, Alex, for your question. I served as a JAG for 4 years on active duty and then an additional 21 years in the reserves. And it's very clear that striking shipwreck survivors is a war crime. There's no dispute that the second strike was on shipwreck survivors. And even Senator Cotton says they were trying to flip a boat. There's no evidence they actually flipped that boat. And when you listen to Representative Jim Himes, he says they were in distress. They had no means of locomotion. They had no radio. And then articles say that they appear to have been waving, which could be interpreted as asking for help or surrendering. That's why the Department of Justice needs to open a war crimes investigation.
So the military reportedly said in those closed-door meetings that the second strike was justified because those men were still in the fight. They were going to continue their drug run, or at least try to do that. I know you weren't in the briefing, but as a former Air Force JAG lawyer, is that plausible? I mean, what specifically stands out to you that challenges the military's apparent justification for this second strike?
Well, let's just talk about the strikes of all of the boats. So I read the classified legal memo, and on this September 2nd strike, what I can tell you is the reporting is that the boat wasn't even headed towards the United States. It was headed towards another foreign country in South America. So there is no justification whatsoever for the United States military to prevent drugs from going from one foreign country to another foreign country in South America. So I'm not even sure the first strike itself was legal. And certainly the second strike is not legal because, again, it's a war crime to hit shipwreck survivors.
So Donald Trump said this week he would have no problem releasing the footage. And now Democrats on the House Armed Services Committee are asking him to make good on it. The Pentagon has released plenty of videos of the other attacks on these alleged drug boats. But how important, sir, is it for the video of this strike to become public?
It's extremely important, and the American public should be able to see and decide for themselves whether or not this looks like a war crime. And if it does, then we need to have people prosecuted. And certainly, at the very least, we need an investigation opened to see if this was a war crime, and if there was a cover up of it, and who was involved in executing the illegal orders. I also note that there were other boat strikes where there were shipwreck survivors, and the U.S. military saved those people. So why did the U.S. military act differently in later cases? And it would suggest to me that the military knew what they did in this case on September 2nd was wrong.
Yeah, you bring up something that I keep asking that question. There were two survivors specifically from one, and they were repatriated to their countries. It just doesn't really make sense. But that said, we have lawmakers on both sides who've said Admiral Bradley, who oversaw the strikes, told them he did not receive a kill them all order, despite earlier reporting saying otherwise. So does that now exonerate Secretary Hegseth? And if so, who is responsible?
Well, let's be clear. Secretary Hegseth lied when the media reports came out about the second strike. So covering up a war crime could also be a federal crime. But we need to see what the rules of engagement are. We need to see what was the general atmosphere in which Secretary Hegseth gave this authorization. And did the military commanders understand that their role was to basically have no quarter and to make sure there are no survivors. So we don't know any of that in terms of what the actual written authorizations and orders are. That's why there needs to be an investigation, and this information needs to be released.
So I want to get to the root of all this, because at least 87 people have been killed in 22 known attacks since the alleged drug boat strikes began. That's according to the administration. But is this debate over the double strike missing the point here? Does accusing the administration of a war crime make it seem the U.S. is legitimately at war with these alleged drug smugglers, or narco-terrorists, as the administration calls them? Is it an official war?
That's a very interesting question. So let's just first acknowledge that grocery prices are continuing to increase. Electricity costs are now starting to surge, and healthcare costs are skyrocketing. And what is the Trump administration focused on? These boat strikes in Venezuela, and now the president's talking about potentially strikes on land. The priorities are completely messed up, especially when we're talking about a strike on a boat that's not even heading towards the United States. So this entire operation needs to be investigated. Congress needs to be involved, and the Republicans who are in charge need to start asking questions and having hearings, because the priorities are all messed up, and it's not clear to me any of this is even legal.
So, basic question here, just want to confirm, have lawmakers been shown irrefutable proof that all of these strikes are on boats running drugs to the United States? Have the identities of who are in these boats been made clear?
So that's another great point you made, because the two survivors on another strike that, in fact, the U.S. military saved, they were repatriated and not prosecuted, which suggests that they weren't even drug smugglers. Who are these people, and why did we repatriate them? It tells me they may very well have been innocent. And so we need an entire set of folks in Congress who are willing to look at this and hold hearings. And unfortunately, right now, the Republicans are simply being a rubber stamp to the Trump administration. And that's why it's so important that we flip the House. And I note that there's no statute of limitations for war crimes.
Okay. Congressman Ted Lieu, as always, very good to speak with you. Thank you so much.